Welcome back to Curious Now from the Center for Medical Simulation. I'm Jenny Rudolph, and I'm back this week with Janice Palaganas and Laura Rock, and we're going to be talking more about how does conversation change culture. This week, thinking about how we can transform toxic culture by both sharing our point of view clearly and inviting other people's point of view. Welcome, Laura. Do you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, I'm Laura Rock. I'm a pulmonologist and a critical care doctor at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center.
And Janice Palaganas.
Hi, everyone. Excited for this week, Jenny. Janice Palaganas. I'm a professor of health professions education at MGH Institute of Health Professions.
Thanks for being here, both of you. And you may also hear the voice of James Lipshaw, our producer. Hi, James.
Hey, Jenny.
So, Laura and Janice, last week we talked about the transformational role of inviting input in creating a microculture around us that affirms relatedness and also cools down conflict because we're addressing the data, aka the information, aka the point of view that we have, in a cool way instead of kind of butting our heads against each other. This week, we're going to move that just an inch forward in terms of our capabilities. And in addition to having an inquiry about what are we missing, the readiness goal this week was to share your point of view about what you think is important and then pair it with that inquiry. And some of you may be familiar with the concept of advocacy inquiry, which is how Chris Argyris, Bill Torbert, and then I and others in the simulation field refer to that pairing of being transparent about what I think and what I care about and inviting the other person to share what they think and they care about. And although this pairing of I saw, I think, I wonder, or advocacy inquiry has been very powerful for many people, it's also really hard to get started with. And I still struggle with it myself to some degree to this day. So Laura and Janice, I'd just love to hear, where are you at with your practice of sharing your point of view and then inviting someone else's? Where are you struggling with that? Where's a stuck point? Where have you had success? And we're going to kind of mutually coach each other here and share ways to help each other out with this practice.
You know, I've really been reflecting on what this move does. And I think when we really when I really ground myself in what don't I know and ask the group, what might I be missing? It can be really hard to do. So, obviously it depends on the context and sometimes it's easier than others, but I really think it signals it's okay not to know. And it has this incredible ripple effect on the entire team. And I almost think the harder it is for me to do in that moment, the more important the ripple effect is. So if I feel a little bit awkward or vulnerable saying to maybe a team in my hospital that I don't know as well, or where I feel like I'm in a specialty that I don't work with much, and I say, here's my thinking, I'd love to know what others think, because I might be missing something. That by modeling that, it really helps, I think, the entire team stay, reflex toward curiosity rather than certainty.
Yeah, so Laura, I want to just dig in on two kind of little stuckish points that sometimes come up for me and might be relevant. You're now, relatively senior clinician, but I can imagine for any of the three of us, when we were in our 20s or younger, expressing a point of view and then asking other people what is their perspective on it might land as weak. I think we all think it lands as strong now, but I'm thinking of some of our listeners who may be newer in their fields. Their identity is sort of more provisional. They're trying to prove themselves. And so I think it can be hard to do anything other than assert your point of view. But I think it's really important to combine the two. And I no longer really struggle with that. because I think that if I'm asking someone else their perspective, I owe it to them to share mine. So I wonder how you guys have grappled with that sort of power dynamic and or tension between wanting to get things your way and assert your point of view while also recognizing that including other perspectives could be important. How do you grapple with that?
I mean, it's so hard. I think even as a fairly senior clinician, I still think it's hard, and there are times when I wish I had, introduced more curiosity or been more willing to transparently share my perspective and invite others and sort of offer that kind of curiosity to the entire room. And there are times when I maybe just speak privately with my own small team to say that I should have done that. So, I just want to share that this can be really hard even if you're a senior, but now I feel a special sort of obligation to model that for the more junior faculty or trainees, because I think if I don't, no one will. Taking that risk, especially when there's hierarchy, allows the it shares ownership of the culture. And even in your own home, like I remember I had a conversation a few weeks ago with my older son, and we were just having this struggle with kind of managing summer schedules, and I really wanted to do a family trip, but they had all these other plans. And so by saying, here's the thing, I think it's really important for us to have this, make it a priority to have this time together, and explain my perspective on it, and then say, so, and what's your take? How do you see it? And I could see that, it broadened the ownership of the culture of our family to my kid, to say, yeah, actually, this matters to me too. I mean, he didn't say it like that, but and it might not even happen in the same conversation. The goal might be to just have someone think about it. But I think the same thing can happen in a hospital if I have the courage to say something, to share something that may be hard for me to say, or maybe require a lot of kind of vulnerability on my part, that it sort of invites a sharing of the ownership of the culture to, especially if it's in a hierarchy situation.
Yeah, I like that idea of broadening the responsibility by when you invite the perspective rather than forcing something on someone. Janice, your thoughts about your edge there? One thing I've heard you say in the past is, you kind of have to be in the mood or you have to be in the right stance to
The
do this
right,
work. Can you talk
yeah.
about that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think your question's really a good one. You're the one that Laura addressed, which is it is very difficult. And if I were to do an ethnography on how people talk, at least in the hospital setting, they don't follow up with the invitation. It's always a point of view. And when I think of when, back in the day before I learned all of these moves, if you will, the challenges I would have with sharing my point of, or sorry, for inviting people to speak after I've shared my point of view is not really so much the being seen as having less power or credibility, but more, is it appropriate in this moment, and do we have the time to even invite more input? And I think over time, it's so important to me, you lose the ability to create a culture that Laura speaks of, that you speak of, Jenny, at the expense of holding back because of time, right? Like I'd rather give up time um, and ask that invitation. But I think the most important thing is the adjective you use when stating that invitation, which is following immediately with a genuine invitation. Because I have coached, I sit on a lot of dissertation committees, and have coached a lot of my students around, sharing the point of view and then asking for an invitation and giving them, examples of scripting, letting them practice. But the authenticity, like the genuine curiosity that follows a very strong point of view, is not there. And everyone can feel it. So
Mhm.
the more difficult thing is how do you make that internal transition? And I think this is where I feel like you kind of have to be in the mood to be able to get yourself, because if your emotions are so triggered and you cannot internally be curious about others and you just wanted to say what you wanted to say because you wanted to say it and you want everyone to agree, it's very difficult to even make that internal transition to ask an invitation that actually feels inviting. I still can't do it sometimes.
It risks incongruity and the bad impact of kind of appearing to say one thing, but really the vibe you're giving is something else. So Janice, I want to possibly disagree with you in one way, which is I've often found myself in settings where I am literally gritting my teeth with frustration and anger at the utter stupidity of the other person. And if only they would see the world my way, everything would be so much better. So I've had it happen a number of times where I'm really indignant about what the other person is doing. I literally am kind of leaning forward. I want them to change what they're doing. And all I can do at that moment is remind myself to use the skills I have. So why I'm slightly disagreeing with you, Janice, is I literally just go through the motions, because if I can ask the question decently, I am likely to get an answer that destabilizes my certainty. So,
Okay. So I think what I was trying to say, Jenny, is that your emotions are so high, you don't even think to invite.
got it. Okay. Yeah, so I can assure you that I have been with significant others who detest that about me, and I'm absolutely like that. And I've been reminded in the moment, both by my daughter Gia and by somebody I'm involved with, like, hey, where's the curiosity? So I think maybe thinking about just wrapping us up here, we are all going to struggle with those moments where we can't bring in the curiosity. And I think we should have a little grace for ourselves, self-compassion, and, remember that we can have a redo later, potentially.
Yeah, I will say as a coach, we get people tired. We do a lot of difficult aerobic work, and then we practice situations. Because if we only practice in the conditions where you're not tired, you just started, you got all this energy, your form is perfect, it's easy to do in those conditions, but those aren't the conditions you face in the world. In the game, you're going to be tired. You're going to have gotten hit earlier. You're going to have all these situations. It's going to be in the rain. It's going to be muddy. Like, it's not going to be perfect conditions. And yet you still have to follow through and do the work. And so I do think that in those moments where it feels impossible, obviously we have to build up to it, but we can't put aside like, oh, I'm not in the conditions where I can do this right now. Like, that's
It's
the
actually
moment where
when
we
you need
have
it
to do it the
most.
most. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Janice and Laura, I'd like to wrap up this conversation of our grappling with how do we pair sharing our point of view with an inquiry. So this has been Curious Now, working on the workout of the week of pairing your point of view with an inquiry into the other person's point of view. I've been here with Laura Rock. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
And Janice Palaganas.